Right, hello everybody. Today I'm going to finish off this series about the 360 action camera, and I'm going to talk about what I think are the bad points about it, or the negative side of it, better rather than the positive side. So don't get me wrong, I love this camera, but I think it's only fair to bring to everybody's attention the bad points. The first thing is the fact that every setting but the standard video setting has to be put through the app. That's the app either on your phone or the app on your PC or laptop, which in my opinion is a little bit of a pain in the arse, because you have to download the footage from here via Bluetooth or USB-C cable if you're using it on your PC or your laptop. Then you have to put it through the app, so you have to render it out the app before you can edit it in your own software that you use for your editing. Now, if you download it through your phone or via Bluetooth, it takes forever. Really does take a long time. And if you're using the app on the PC, it takes a long time for it to render out of the app back onto the PC, so you can actually use it in your editing software. It's like a middle section that you shouldn't really need, but everything standard video setting has to be put through the app to make it usable. When you're traveling, you just want to shoot, go, put it onto your phone, whack it straight onto YouTube. You can't do that. It's got to go through the app first, unless you're using the standard video. That brings me very nicely to my next bad point, which is the storage on this little boy. Now the storage on this, it's got a 30 gig memory, of which 27 gigs is available for files. So 3 gigs is already taken up with all the software, so it gives you 27 gigs for storing your files. Now when you think that on Pro Video it uses 1 gig to every 2 minutes of record time, so you start to understand that it doesn't take long to fill up the storage within this thing, and there is no external storage. There is nowhere to update the storage. It's what is in the camera is all that you've got, which means that every 54 minutes you have to download your files to your phone via Bluetooth, which, like I said, isn't the quickest thing to do in the world, so it does take a lot of time. Also, the battery on the camera, it only lasts, when you take the camera out of the case like that, the battery as it stands like that only lasts for 24 minutes on Pro, and then you have to replace it back into the charging case, so you can use it in its charging case like that, but otherwise you have to close it up so it can charge, and it takes 30 minutes to charge. So you can do that 4 times, take it out, put it back into the case, but you know, when you think you can only record for 54 minutes, but you can record that, so you'd have to download the footage twice before your battery in your storing case runs out. So the recording times on the other settings are a bit better. They're roughly about 30 minutes on the standard, 30 minutes on hyperlapse, 30 minutes on time lapse. Obviously it won't be 30 minutes on slow-mo, because you never record for 30 minutes on slow-mo, but they are a lot longer, except for the Pro. Moving on to the next bad point to do with the Pro is that it only records in 30 and 50 frames per second. Don't understand it at all, because I record in 30 or 60, because if I want to slow down 60, I slow it down, it becomes buttery smooth because it's half the speed. It looks really nice. But if you record on 50 and try and slow it down to 30, 50 doesn't divide into 30. It makes the footage slightly, it's not buttery smooth, it's jumping. It looks like the stabilisation is out. So I don't understand why they've got 30 and 50 and not 30 and 60, but maybe they'll update it with the next firmware update, but you never know, And also remember, you can only record in 1080 and 2.8K, so there's no 4K on here. Right, moving on. the next thing is when you turn it, when you open this up and you press connect, it automatically starts up in standard video mode, right? Even if when you shut it in the case, you've got it set to Pro mode, you've been using it on Pro mode, when you open the case back up again after it's charged and you switch it back, you connect like that, it will start back in the default of standard video mode. Now that's again is another pain in the arse, because if you've recorded in Pro 30 frames per second and you've run out of battery and you whack it in there and you sit there for 30 minutes waiting for it to charge, and after it's charged you open it up, you switch it on, you've then got to scroll through to set it back up to Pro mode at 30 frames per second. It should stay on whatever you used last. That's what but I did hear that when they first came out and they were given out to YouTubers, before the first firmware update, it did used to stay on whatever you were recording it before. Since the first update on the day of release, which was the 10th of March, they changed that now, so when you switch it on, it only starts up in standard record. The next main problem is that you can't plug in an external mic. You can't connect an external mic via Bluetooth, you can't plug an external mic into the case. The only mic on here is actually, I don't know whether you can see this, but it's actually on the top. So when it's sitting on your chest, you can't cover that mic and it picks up everything. The wind, I've put a video out of what it's like unedited, just straight off the camera, and audio is unusable. That's my opinion on that. Finally, the final negative I've got is the camera isn't great in low light. The recording is very noisy, it's very grainy, and the stabilization is very poor. Now the reason for this is because, even if you record in Pro, the reason for this is because when it gets dark, the camera for some reason can't use horizontal lock, which means it can't define the horizon. It can't define the horizon, so it can't lock onto the horizon. So the stabilization is out the window. So that's something to keep in mind, is that the low light, it's not the best camera in the world. It's sufficient if you're just using it for YouTube or something like that, but if you want it for anything else, it's not, you know, it's not the best in the world for that particular thing. Now I know after saying all these bad points, you'll think that this camera, which costs $300, £290, is not the best camera in the world, and is it worth buying? Well, in my honest opinion, it is worth buying. If you haven't got a GoPro or you haven't got an action camera of another kind, this is probably the best action camera, or, you know, sort of for the bang for the buck. You know, for the money, this is probably one of the best. The main feature is like I say, I mean, it's barely the size of your thumb. You know what I mean? It's barely the size of your thumb. It sits on your chest. You know, you press a button to record. The light doesn't, you can set the light so it doesn't even come on, so people don't even know you're recording. Your hands are free to do whatever you want to do. From that point of view, it's 30 minutes of fun. That is what you have to remember. It's 30 minutes of fun. You can go out, you can record what you want, and you always get what you recorded, because it is literally a point and shoot. When it's in the case, you can record for 2.5 hours. There's a thing there for the tripod, or you can actually open the legs up, which are there, and use it as a tripod itself. But you can record for 2 hours 30 minutes in the case. Now it's waterproof. Now when I say it's waterproof, what I mean is that the camera is waterproof, not the case. The case cannot go in water because of the electronics in there. It's not sealed. That can go in the water up to 17 foot or 4 meters, I think it is, but that can go in the water, no problem. So just make sure you dry it off before you put it back in the case. So you can take that in the water. It's no hassle. You're not holding a GoPro or anything like that. It weighs 10-12 grams, that's all. So I would recommend it if you haven't got a GoPro or an Osmo Action or any other action camera. I wouldn't recommend it if you've got any of them things, because truthfully there are better out there. Obviously the GoPro 9 is much better, the Osmo Action is better, but if you haven't got any of them, I'd recommend that strongly. But they're the bad points, take them on board. Maybe some of these bad points will get updated with the firmware updates as they go on. I think the main problem is in my opinion, my main problem that is a stumbling block for using this is the external mic. It hasn't got an external mic. Right, that's the end of that video. Like I say, they're the bad points on this